and welcome back to the Inspired Podcast, a podcast made to have conversations centered around being designed by God to discover and dwell. Whatever season in life you're in, you will pick up helpful insight, thoughts to think on throughout the week, and leave this episode feeling inspired to know God in deeper ways. I'm Jessica, and I'm on the Inspired team here at X Church, and I'm joined by my friend Janice. And if you didn't get the memo from last week, we have a brand new host that's joining us this season, so listen in to find out who that special person is. We've said this before, but one of our goals with this podcast is to have meaningful conversations about everyday topics, all filtered through the lens of Jesus. In this episode, we dive deep into parenting, so deep in fact that we had to break this into 2 episodes. We cover everything from controversial topics in parenting, what the Bible does or does not say about parenting, and practical tips thrown in from 3 different angles and generations of parenting. All I'm going to say is you do not want to miss this episode. Hey, hey, hey.
Welcome back. We're here again.
Yeah, we're excited you're here. And we've got a really great episode. This episode, we decided that we would talk about the most non-controversial topic in the history of man, and that's parenting.
Yeah. I mean, nobody has opinions about that.
No.
I'm not really
None
sure
at all.
what we're even going to talk about.
I know. It's just going to be very, even keeled. And, since everybody parents the same, I'm sure that this conversation will be pretty easy.
Yeah, we all know the right way to do it.
Well, yeah. What you are hearing, truth be told, is that we could probably not be further from the truth. And that, I'm sure if you find yourself in the role of being a parent, maybe you're a step parent, maybe you're a biological parent, maybe you're a foster parent, maybe you're an adoptive parent, maybe you're a spiritual parent. I don't know. There's a lot of different parenting roles that sometimes we find ourselves in. The purpose for this episode is really just to throw some ideas out there and land at a truth that we as Christians can all agree on, and pointing back to the reason why we parent, and that is Jesus.
Yeah, that's right.
I mean, where the fountain of discipline comes out, the fountain of our yeses and our nos and our nurturing and our guide rails and all that. I think that the scripture is not very black and white about parenting. I think it's I'd argue to say it's pretty gray.
In my
there's
nothing
knowledge,
in there to say, oh, this is when your kids should have a cell phone, or
right,
when you start giving them screens, and
this is when you can start leaving them at home. This is there's really no conclusive, scriptures to really back up the very small details that we find ourselves in a role of being a parent. But what I think that we can agree on is that there are some big overarching truths and principles that we can kind of hang our hat on and come around to know how to make those small decisions and know kind of the groundwork or the framework that we can use to make wise decisions in our parenting. So, but like I've said in previous podcasts, our table, we have a wide range of parenting experience.
Oh, yeah. Starting at none.
Megan.
But you've been parented.
You have been parented.
I have been parented. I've taken like a mentor role before. So I feel like I can bring a little bit to the conversation today.
Well, and like what you said in a previous episode, you are getting your teaching degree.
Yeah.
And with that comes training.
Yep.
Because in teaching, you deal with parents all the time.
And in the classroom, you kind of take the role of educational parent in a way.
Yes.
You're still responsible for them to some extent. Mm-hmm. And so that's been a learning experience for me. And I can also say that there is not enough training for educational parents either. So take it easy on your teachers.
Oh, yeah. Well, as always, you've got your journal, and so I'm expecting some statistics coming from you.
I did not bring statistics today.
Oh my
Okay.
gosh.
I know. I just brought stories, so
Well,
Even
that's all
better.
it'll be fun.
right. Yeah.
And then we've got Janice.
Yeah. I've,
How long have you been a parent?
let's see. I hate it when people ask me this because then I have to do the math.
No,
and
you
figure out
don't.
how
It's
old
just your oldest child.
I know that, but then I have to do the math, and it's like, let's see, he's 44 years.
Okay.
Okay, I had to think a second.
Well,
And
fact
guess
check
what?
that.
You're still a parent.
Yeah, and I will. Yes. Once you sign up for that never goes away. I hate to tell you that it doesn't go away when they're 18 or 25 or whatever. You're a parent. You will always be mom or dad.
Mm-hmm.
And my kids are 44, 42, and 40.
Okay.
And so I've been, I've been a parent for a long time. I was a single mom for 15 years, and then I got remarried, and then when my kids were adults, and then I'm a single parent again because my husband passed away. So I've kind of done an assortment of things when it comes to parenting. Get them through the terrible 2s and 3s and the teenage years and the young adult years and all the other stuff. So
Which phase was your favorite?
I loved it when they were teenagers.
Ooh.
I absolutely did. There were times that it was like, oh, this is like insane, and it was really, really difficult, but it was also so much fun too. And my kids are really close in age. My oldest two are 17 months apart, and then the younger one and my daughter, who's the youngest, are 2 years apart. So like when she was born, I had 3 kids, 3.5 and under. So they're all really close. So we kind of did like the ages and stages pretty much together, which is kind of what I wanted. And so they were all like teenagers. It was expensive because that's when I was a single parent. It was when they were teenagers.
Oh, gosh. I didn't even think about that.
Yeah, I used to pray and say, Jesus, could you come back before my kids turn 13?
Yeah.
And he didn't do it.
Aw.
So
I was I think my mom would agree that I was a terrible 1.5 to like 10. So she would probably also.
I was like totally expecting you to be like 1.5 to 3.
No. I think she would agree that she preferred the teenage years for me. So
I recently asked my mother-in-law, what was your favorite years to parent? And she said elementary age years. And I think I would have to agree with her because right now I have a kindergartner, a 3rd grader, and a 5th grader. And as far as physicality goes, my job is not hard because they can do for themselves. They can cook themselves, food if they need to. It's not glamorous, but it's food that will fill their bellies. I don't have to wipe anybody's bottoms anymore. So that's a plus. And so physically, the physical demand is not a lot, but I have noticed that it has changed from physical demand to emotional demand. But I still like it because they're figuring out really cool things at this age. Their spirituality starts to take shape. Their own personality starts to take shape. And so it's cool to get to see this stage. And so I don't know. I guess if I had to pick, in my only experience, my oldest is 11. So I think I would enjoy the years that we're in right now. But it's not to say that I remember when I had 1, I was like, gosh, this is hard. And it was hard with 1. And then when I had 2, I was like, this is a little bit harder. And then you have 3, like you said, you had 3 under 3.5.
yeah,
That's really hard. It's like a
marathon.
marathon.
It was easier going from 2 to 3 kids than it was from 1 to 2. And and some of it was my oldest two being 17 months apart. It was like having twins, but one of them could run around, basically. It's the way I used to do it. And I remember the Lamaze instructor, yes, I am that old, Lamaze instructor that I had 3 boys, and they were all 15 months apart. And I remember going up to her after class one night and saying, because, I knew I was having these 2 kids that were going to be 17 months apart. And I said, so, you really, they're that close? And she said, yeah. And I said, don't take this wrong. I said, but you seem like you're reasonably sane. So obviously it's okay. And she said, you'll be fine. The first 18 months are going to be totally crazy. Just plan on it. But after that, she says, I'll guarantee you after 18 months, you'll be wanting to have another one. So, which was about right. So, but it was really crazy. At one point, I remember when my younger son was maybe about 4 months old, and their schedules were all opposite. And so I wasn't getting any sleep and everything else that, I was writing in my journal, and I said, Lord, you made a mistake. You made a mistake giving me, 2 sons that are 17 months apart. Mm-hmm. When you were going down the list, your finger slipped and it was the person's whose name was above mine, not mine. And so because all I want to do right now is walk out the front door and lock it behind me and just keep going because I feel like I'm messing things up and I can't take it. So, and it wasn't too long after that my younger sons eliminated a nap at a very young age and just started taking a really, really, really long nap in the afternoon, which gave me a half hour with each of them by themselves because I was mom guilt, that I wasn't paying enough attention. And it gave me 30 minutes by myself. Mm-hmm. And
those naps are glorious.
Oh my gosh. It was like,
do you know, okay, well, this is already going to start some controversy. I was a very big scheduler, like with my kids. Mm-hmm. And I know there's people, especially nowadays, that are like anti-schedule. I actually even read a book that I was a big fan of. And I remember, I think down in Texas, it's a little bit more popular, but I won't even say the name of it because whenever I didn't even know this, but I would say the name of the book and I would either get a gasp like, oh, you are not reading that. Or, oh my gosh, I love that book and it works. It was so divisive, and it kind of became a game because I'm like, ooh, let's push people's buttons, see what they think about this. I actually will say it's called Baby Wise. And I remember seriously talking to a family friend and saying she asked me, so are your kids napping or whatever? I'm like, oh yeah, they're napping. They're all napping at the same time. And they were like, how do you do that? I'm like, well, Baby Wise. And she's like, oh, you are not reading. I have heard babies die from that. And I was like, what? Babies die from this book that talks about helping your child form good sleep habits and form good eating habits because it was very scheduled, saying feed every 3 hours. And of course there's caveats, you have to feed, cluster feedings, all that, whatever. But for the most part, I stuck to a pretty rigid schedule. And I'm sitting here with 3 kids and have them all napping or resting at the same time. And like you said, have a little bit of time. And I'm like, this is how I stay sane. But I know that's not the case for everybody because, sometimes there's so many different parenting methods these days. But how do you, has it? Please tell me.
God, it has always been that way. When my mom told me that when she was having myself and my brothers, it was Dr. Spock. Dr. Benjamin.
From Star Wars?
No. His name was Dr. Benjamin.
No, Star Trek.
No, not that Dr. Spock. Dr. Benjamin Spock, and he was a pediatrician who basically wrote one of the first parenting books. It was like the parenting Bible kind of thing, and that was what she, everyone went by. And years later, she gave me her copy, and I read this, and I was aghast. I was like, oh my gosh, I can't believe that people followed this. But one of the things was that they talked about what to do with what he called a hypertonic baby, which I was.
Hypertonic?
Basically kind of colicky.
Colicky, was that the word?
Kind of yeah. Yeah, and all this. And I'm like, well, that explains probably why I am the way I am, So, but there was just that philosophy. And then, when I was raising my kids, there were different thoughts and philosophies, about what to do. If you were in the Christian church at that time when you were raising kids, then you read Dr. Dobson.
Oh yeah,
and there were a lot of really, we had parenting seminars with his videos and stuff like that, and there were a lot of good things that I learned from that and stuff like that, but. And now there's all these other things, it's interesting when I see my own kids with their kids to say, just stand back and watch what they do,
Well, and I'm sure, okay, so you guys can't see me, but I have Megan sitting on my left and Janice sitting on my right. And I'm sure that Janice can look back and look at people nowadays that parent and shake her head. sometimes probably and think like, what are you doing?
Yeah.
Probably you just keep them
I do.
internal thoughts.
I do.
And I'm sure Megan sitting over here can be like, I will never parent like that.
Yeah, I was actually thinking, in which book did they recommend the nose Frida? Because I will
Do you
never.
know what that is, Janice?
What?
The nose Frida? Don't try and figure out what it is.
I'll just tell you what it is because it's actually an amazing tool.
Mm-mm.
Do you have scientific evidence that says this is not healthy?
I've seen it. No, it's probably perfectly healthy, but it just does not look natural.
Okay, so it's this like tube,
Yeah.
and it's got a hose connected to it,
It's a
and then a
straw.
mouthpiece, like a straw.
Yeah.
And the tube, you buy filters for the tube. And basically, you know those suckers, like the ball suckers that they like that
Yeah,
they
for
shove
ice
in the
cream.
side
I
of
think I
your
see where
crib.
this is
exactly
going.
where it's going.
You suck with your mouth and you breathe it in and like breaks up all the mucus in their nose or whatever, and then it gets caught by the filter and you just like wash out the filter. Are you hyperventilating?
Yeah, my palms are sweating.
So that wasn't around with my two older ones, but my younger one, I did buy that. And like when they had things like RSV and croup and all that, I think it was a lifesaver.
Sarah, my sister, she also has 3.
Mm-hmm.
And when she had Sophia, her first one, she asked me to go get a nose Frida for her from Target. And I didn't
You're
realize...
like nose Frito? Like the Frito aisle?
the chip section? I didn't realize the purpose until I watched her. She just took it right out of the box and just went after it. Like, as
Get
if
that
like
snot.
everyone should know how to use a nose Frida. And I was like, I
You're like
cannot
traumatized.
watch this anymore. I can't do it.
I
just
don't think I could have done that.
Okay, but
I'm
aside from
good at my
nose Frida,
bulk
I'm
syringe
sure
and-
both of you have had
Yes.
times where you're like, Janice is like, you're not, I mean, you're a lot nicer than me because I'm sure you don't think these thoughts like you're doing it wrong. Or it would work better if you just blah, blah, blah. And then you're probably sitting here thinking like, that is a really bad way to parent. And I don't want to parent like that.
Right. So I am.
But little do you know that you will put your foot in your mouth because I've done it before.
I knew coming into this episode that this would happen. So I don't know if I should be selective about what I say. For
yeah,
when I
because it's going to be
listen back,
documented forever.
or if I should just be upfront, because I'm 23 and I don't have children yet, but I am getting married. And so obviously I look for a good parent in my spouse. And so I've thought about what I would like parenting to look like. And Jordan and I have talked about things we're never going to do and things we are going to do. And I just feel like I will come into this with all these things that I will refuse to do. And then I'm just going to have to do it. Like,
Can I just
screens.
ask you for some like examples?
So
I'm like really putting you on the
Yeah.
line here.
Yeah.
Like
Come on, Megan.
tell me one thing that you both want to do and then tell me one thing that you think you won't do.
Okay, so I would really like to have an early, like 7:30, 8 o'clock bedtime for all of my kids.
Okay.
So then I can spend time with Jordan. I also don't want to get them phones until high school. Because I work with middle schoolers right now, and I just see how distracted some of them can get by screens. And so at one point I did say that screens were going to be a no for a long time. But I've also been in scenarios where I've been watching my nieces and I'm
You're
like,
"Here's
please take this iPad
take
from
the phone.
me. So that
watch
one has
whatever you
already
want to.
started to waver. And I've asked some of my students, like, so if I wait until freshman year of high school to get my future kids a phone, are they going to hate me? And every single student has said absolutely yes.
Yeah. Well, okay, I'll just say I will say that like I feel like screens are my arch enemy. They're like my nemesis. Like it's always a battle. But hey, we can't I mean like we live in that world. So
Yeah,
we can't
Yeah.
you know, we have to have some give. But it's just it's hard.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So and I would love to have like home cooked meals with organic meat for my children every time they eat.
Wait till they go on the hot dog
trying
chicken
to
nugget.
hold my laugh in.
Yeah, I know. Wait till they go on the hot dog jag.
I know.
Oh, yeah.
The first time I see my kids eating a hot dog, I don't know what I'm going to do. I just read about hormone disruption all the time. And so I'm just convinced that I'll be able to like meal prep for my kids, you know, and it's just not going to happen, but I have hope.
Yeah. And I think that, I mean, coming from experience, like when I started parenting, I don't even think I knew what organic was, or if I did, it was like, yeah, right. That's like triple the price.
Yeah.
So it just was not feasible. But we, through the course of our parenting, have gone on a few medical journeys, to where like our middle child had some medical issues, and we went to several doctors, like medical doctors, and did not find the answers that we needed. I want to say wanted, but I really think it was a necessity. We didn't find the answers we needed, which led us to a holistic doctor who is a chiropractor. And so then I swung the pendulum the other way. I mean, because the reason I'm not going to get into this. The reason that that his health was compromised is because he had, like, his immune system was not strong.
Yeah.
From things. And so we swung the opposite way in the pendulum and went all organic and grass fed, and like we want like no dairy, blah, 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 all these hormone disruptions, like immune system crashers, all these things. And now I'm back in the middle to where I was actually telling someone the other day, look, just balance, because like if my kids have chicken nuggets, like I'm going to put a piece of vegetable on their plate, and then I feel a lot better. But it's all about balance.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I actually had chicken nuggets for lunch today, so I feel like if I'm eating them, I can't keep my kids from
Well, you can. You just have to hide in the closet under the clothes, and then you can have your bag of Oreos.
I also realized when I started watching my nieces that anything I had in my hands was also theirs.
Fair game for their mouth. Right.
Yeah.
And what about you, Janice? I'm going to put you, in the spotlight. What things I'm not going to say do you disagree with, because I don't think we have to drive that division.
Right.
What things maybe are different these days in parenting that you see that are like, that were just never a thing when you were parenting?
Okay. Probably the first thing that comes to my mind is the number of parents that have their kids sleeping in their bed.
So that wasn't very common when you were raising kids.
No, they had their own bed and they stayed there, and and that was their space, and all that kind of thing. And it wasn't. I mean, that wasn't even an option. I mean, everybody has the experience where somebody, the child has a nightmare. You come in, but then it was like, okay, you can stay for a little while, but then I'm going back to you, and I'll get you settled down in your own bed. In fact, when my daughter went through that phase of there's a monster in the closet kind of thing, and you don't argue with a 3-year-old. You say, okay, well then mommy's going to take care of the monster in the closet, and I had a mister for plants, and I put a little of my perfume in it.
Parent tax.
Yes, and I said, okay, this is monster spray, and we're going to get rid of the monster.
Genius.
So she, I said, come on. And so I said, where do you want me to spray it? And she said, well, in the closet. So I opened the closet, and I'm like, take that, you're dead, that kind of thing. Yeah, right. Slam the door, and I said, where else? And well, under my bed. So we took care of that, and we, the window, all kinds of places. And so then it smelled like me in the room, and then she was fine. But
Just like me in the thick of parenting right now, I think like, the thing, like if I were to post that on Facebook nowadays, think about Facebook or Instagram or TikTok, whatever. Think about the comments that I would get if I'm like, guess what? We had a monster problem, so I filled up a spray bottle and I, spritzed it all over the room. I can imagine that I would get comments that would say, "Oh yeah, what are you teaching your kid, that there's monsters in real life? You're lying to your child. Now you're going to scar them for the rest of their life. They're going to be in counseling from the age of 15 on. And, or you're going to get like, oh, you're a genius. Like, that's brilliant. I'm going to do the same thing. I just feel like parenting can be so divisive these days, and I
It's
really don't know what to do
awful.
about it.
It is awful. The things that I see that, that you see on social media, and that it's like, first off, part of it for me is like, I just wouldn't put anything on social media,
Yeah.
because you do that, you open yourself up to get all the people who really are silly and don't know really anything to make all those comments. And I think, I think for women, I remember being a young mom, it is a really vulnerable place to be, because, you get this baby and you realize, there's no manual with this thing, to tell me, and it can't talk to me and tell me what's going on, but you love this child so much, and then you can feel overwhelmed, plus your hormones are all over the place, and all of those things, because your heart is, you want to take care and you want to do it right. And I think that the definition of right when it comes to parenting is not as narrow as we try to make it sometimes, because every child is individual, and what may work for one child may not be the wisest thing to do with another, but it's, we can get stuck in that. And then if you put things on social media, then you're going to have all kinds of opinions of, I would never do that, or I would, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
I see that when people start talking about, I let my kid, ride his bike around the block. You did what? That kind of thing. I often look at my kids and say, I don't know how you survived your childhood. I really don't. How did I survive my childhood? There was no seat belts. There were, there were nothing.
Gosh.
It's like, but it's again, I think that for women as moms, our hearts are one way, but we're really vulnerable to the opinions of others, I think.
I know. I mean, how many... I can think of some wise advice that was given to me before I had my first child was, listen, people are going to give you their opinions and you won't even ask for them.
Yeah.
I mean, you can
Yeah.
simply carry around a baby and you will get opinions. And it's so true. And I love the advice that this woman gave me. She said, you take those opinions and you wrestle with them and you pray about them and you ask God about them, and then you do what you feel like you're being led to do.
Yeah.
And I think that's such wise advice, because I mean, and sometimes it didn't really take me long to wrestle, because I could get an opinion and be like, yeah, right. Like, I'm not doing that. Or, yeah, that's a good idea. Maybe I should. And it's playing with routines, it's changing things up, and it's hard because a lot of times, I mean, like as a parent, sometimes I can feel paralyzed of like, I don't know what to do next. And I'm sure you have felt like that as well. And I'm sure you have seen probably your parents in that situation of, I don't really know what to do. I'm kind of stumped. And my question is, what do we do if we can't find explicit advice through scripture, or we can find explicit advice through friends, through counsel and all that. But sometimes I just want to know what's the right thing to do. And so my question is, where do we go? What do we do? Is there resources? How do we talk about it? How do we have a grace-filled conversation about parenting? One that remembers that there is not, the Bible is not clear about whether you should breastfeed or bottle feed.
Yeah.
Like, can we all just remember that those principles are not laid out in the Bible? And so let's not get our, what my mom used to say is panties in a wad. Don't get your panties in a wad about things that are not a big deal,
Well, you have to decide what the essentials are.
Yes, that's good.
And then what are the non-essentials? In the way, the non-essentials are, like you were saying, do you bottle feed? Do you breastfeed? Do you keep a strict schedule, or are you a looser?
Yeah.
Do you let your kids sleep in your bed until whenever, or do you, say no, you stay in your bed? Those are really, when it gets down to, is those are many ways the non-essentials, but the essentials, I think Scripture does tell us, of what we're supposed to be doing, and one of the biggest things is that we are to be, we are to be loving them in an, unconditional, be that example of Jesus to them.
Yeah.
And sometimes that involves the discipline and saying, no, you cannot do this, or, this was wrong, teaching them about forgiveness, all of those things. And, it's that those kinds of more essential things of just loving them and protecting them and teaching them about the Lord and stuff like that. And all those other things that people get so, it's like they want to die on that hill, you know,
Right.
and that's the thing that then keeps us apart, because there is such value in having, you know, like a mom who is in a different stage with her kids, you know, they're older, to have someone to talk to.
Yeah.
I mean, not that you would necessarily do everything they did, but you can at least hear their story about, oh yeah, I had this or something similar, and this is what I did. Because sometimes I think as a mom, you feel like I am the only one dealing with
you feel
this.
very isolated.
Yes,
Several times.
a number of times.
I do love what you said about the essentials, because I think that's a great way to explain it. And Jordan and I have talked about, obviously we have no idea we've made comments about like, that's 18 years. And then we'd be like, but it's actually more than 18, because like I'm 23 and I still live with my mom. So it's definitely more than 18.
Yeah.
So we've already caught ourselves in those like contradictions. But we have talked a lot about just our number one goal to be, as parents, and our number one responsibility is to just be an example of Jesus's love for our kids. So, and that's how we show it to each other. And I think that as long as that framework of approaching them with grace and mercy and love, as long as that's in place, every parent is going to show that differently. Like nap
absolutely.
times, some moms do that out of love for their kids. No naps, moms do that out of love for their kids. Screens, parents do that out of love for their kids. No screens, also out of love for their kids. And so I think that sometimes we forget that we all come from that same framework of just coming from a place of love. And if you think about it, even if you take parenting out of the equation, love looks different for everyone. Like I'm loved differently than my sister is. I receive love differently and I show it differently. And so for us to place that expectations on parents to show love the same exact way is just honestly irrational when you think about it.
Well, and I think the reason parenting is so hard, in my opinion, is because what are you told when you enter into a relationship with a significant other? You're told that communication is key, right?
Yeah.
And I mean, that goes for friends. But especially like significant others, like a spouse. You're told like communication is what's going to keep your marriage going. Good communication is what, you know, is going to help your marriage thrive, yada, yada, yada. Well, I mean, I've been married for 14 years and I'm still learning how to communicate effectively with my husband. And then you just throw kids in the mix who have their own personalities and their own ways of communicating, because we all communicate at different phases in our life and different stages and ages. We have different ways of communicating. A baby, the only way they can communicate is through crying. I mean, like, and so you're taking the personality of me, you're taking the personality of my spouse, and then you have a baby that's crying and you're both trying to decode their communication. And it can be very, very frustrating. I think that's why parenting is so hard, is because you're taking one personality plus another personality, and then however many kids you have, you take those personality, and then outside of that, you're still trying to be a cohesive unit to where you're operating as one, you're making decisions as one, you're trying to guide, and you're also trying to empower your kid to become who the strengths that God has given them and who God has created them to be. And it just becomes a big old mess.
Yeah.
Yes, parenting is not for cowards. I think there's a book by that title at some point. I just remember hearing that and just thinking, you ain't kidding. You know, it really isn't. It can be a daunting task, a daunting calling. But I think the thing that stands out, though, is that we aren't doing it on our own. Yeah. That to keep in mind that God is invested in our families and in our parenting, and that we can invite Him into our parenting. And there's many times that I have just said, you know, one of my prayers that I used to pray for my kids when they were teenagers. I was a single parent when they were a teenager, which is it was not what my plan had been. and realizing that I had to go back to work full time, and I wasn't going to be home when they got home from school, and I wasn't going to be like in the middle of everything as much as I had been used to, and thinking what I felt like it was all out of control. I'm like, I'm not going to know what they're doing. I'm not going to know who they're with, every minute, and that sort of thing. And the Lord just reminded me, he said, well, you aren't, but I am.
Mm-hmm.
And so I started praying a prayer that, to this day, my daughter especially said that it made a difference. I used to pray that's like, Lord, if they're doing something they're not supposed to be doing, please make sure they get caught before they get hurt.
Mm. Yep.
And there were a number of times that, my kids came to me like, Mom, I know. And I used to, and if they're friends, that were hanging out, I tried to make my house the place that everybody wanted to hang out.
Yes.
And it was like, so I got to know their friends because I wanted their friends to know the context of this is where you come from.
Right.
Yeah.
And so I would go up to them, especially my son's friends, and say, so you've been spending a lot of time here. Just wanted to know that you're now on my prayer list, and I'm praying for you this, just like I pray for the rest of my kids. I scared a few of them with that. But I was like, yeah, you're going to be spending time with kids, so if you're doing something you're not supposed to be doing, I'm praying that you get caught before you get hurt.
That's so good.
I
love what you said about being the place where your kids and their friends want to hang out. I feel like that was modeled to us through my husband's parents. They were always the hangout house. And, years later, talking to my mother-in-law, she was like, that was intentional. I mean, like they built this house, and they specifically laid out the house in a way that all the rooms were like shoved in the back. And there was a really big kitchen, a really big open space. There was a really big entertainment area that was, and then the entertainment area was right next to the master bedroom. And she was like, there is all the reason in the world that we put our bedroom next to where all the friends would be hanging out. And I'm like, wouldn't that just be loud? Like when y'all are trying to sleep? She was like, oh honey, we didn't sleep. I mean, like, we're not going to go to sleep when, there's tons of people at our house and, God knows what they're doing or whatever. So, but okay. So here's the thing. I think we just brushed the tip of the iceberg.
Yeah.
I feel like we probably have a lot more depth to go on this subject. So I think we should break this up into two.
I think so. I mean, we even beforehand we were talking about some of the things we wanted to cover.
We didn't even, So I would really love. So like Janice referenced earlier, she was a single mom for a long time, and you said a few things about that. But I really want you to dive into some practical things. Because I know when I was, just even now in the phase of motherhood that I am, and then when I was in your stage, Megan, I was just wanting some practical things. And really, like, I was open to whatever. And so I would love for us to come back in the next episode, and I want you to share, just some personal stories of what it was like to be a single mom. What are some things that you did to cope and to, put one foot in front of the other? And what was your anchor? How did you, what creative things did you do in times that maybe society or culture was saying, was addressing the family unit? And maybe they're like, I'm thinking of just simple things like muffins with mom, pancakes with dad, whatever, like that. Like, what does some of those conversations look like with your kids? Some of those practical things. And then, I would really just love to dive into some of the promises that Scripture has for us as parents. Because I think of several verses. We said that the Bible wasn't very explicit in its outline for do's and don'ts of parenting, but I think that there's some great stories of parents in the Bible and how they taught their kids. I'm thinking the Israelites and how they impressed God's word on their children's heart and gave it down to generations and bind it around your neck, and just the promises of God and what we can do to keep our eyes heavenward in the parenting journey.
Yes.
So I would love to come back for another episode if that's okay with you.
Oh,
girls?
Absolutely.
Awesome. Well, then I know I knew it's a good weighty topic, but I think it deserves more than one episode. So, let this just be the first palate wetter. Just to kind of get you intrigued. There's a lot to talk about, and we're for sure not going to hit on everything that, we want to hear as parents, but maybe this has offered, a little bit of advice, a little bit of perspective probably into our job as parents, or if you find yourself in a parenting role. So come back next episode and here's some practical advice and tips. So
I'm going to write them down.
Yep. We'll see you next week.
Thanks so much for listening. Our hope is that everyone who hears these episodes, near or far, would know that the invitation at our table is always open. You might not be sitting at this table, but our desire is that you would join in on these conversations. So if you were inspired by today's talks, send us an email at inspired@thex.church. We'd love to hear your thoughts, stories, and questions. And as always, don't forget to rate and review wherever you listen to podcasts.